infuriating. I mean, it's utterly infuriating. Our economic policy for the last 60 years was put in place by people who are too lazy to get out from behind their laptops. And so they imagine that nobody would want to work in a factory because they would rather die than work in a factory. They would rather die than watch their own children, by the way, or clean their own toilets. So they imagine that no one would want to do these things. And so they shipped manufacturing overseas and imported a slave caste to do all of the service industry jobs. And then they just go out there and insult the millions of Americans who are employed in these actual industries, the millions of Americans who remember their grandparents having a decent living wage and the American dream while working at a meatpacking plant, because that was the job to have back in the day. So it's so disgusting. And then they sit there on Twitter and say, does anybody really want to work in manufacturing? From their from their $2 million homes that they were able to purchase, Michael, because they, through their policy, shoved the working class out of competition for homes, for an education, and for healthcare, right? So the top 10% now controls over 60% of our GDP. They are not just like the ideal consumer now for the most important things, the most central components of the American dream: housing, healthcare, education, retirement. They are the only consumers now who can afford those things. So the price for those items is tagged to their incomes. Doctors used to marry nurses and lawyers used to marry secretaries, and now doctors marry doctors and lawyers marry lawyers, and they buy up real estate, and real estate is now pegged to their, joint $1 million, $2 million income, which means that their cleaning lady has to commute 2 hours to get to them because she could never dream of even renting in their neighborhood. And then they have the chutzpah to say, well, who would ever want to do the job of being a cleaning lady? The majority of cleaning ladies in America are American citizens. How dare you sneer at people who work 10 times harder than you and have to work 2 jobs because of the economy you made in the name of this, higher value of globalization.